Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, Our New Narrative. This is part 2 in what I've titled Talking About the 1619 and the 1776 project with my buddy, my friend, brother from another mother, Leo. We spent some time in Japan together. We go way back like reclining chairs, as they say. And so I'm going to dive right into the second part of this. We're watching a video, the interview conducted. Mr. Bob Woodson is being interviewed talking about 1619 projects and his project, the 1776 project. I want to ask you guys to like, share, and subscribe. And here we go again.
This is an act of profound grace. And so if a Robert Smalls could act without contempt and animosity and anger towards the people who actually enslaved him, how can some Black with a PhD from Harvard today living in a gated community talk about anger and the need for revenge and the need for all these things? And so these are the kind of contradictions that 1776 is trying to confront. But we don't want to confront it with a counter argument, because people are inspired to change and improve when you can show them victories that are possible, not constantly reminding them of injuries to be avoided. Hank Aaron was the home run king. Looking at Hank Aaron's record through the prism of 1619, you say he was the strikeout king. But looking at it through the prism of 1776, we say he's a home run king. Because if you make a lot of home runs, it means you're going to strike out a lot. But 1619 looks at the deficits of America and not the assets versus the deficits. And so what we think there should be a more balanced understanding of this great nation of ours. As one of our essayists said, if America was so incurably racist, why are Black and brown people from all over the world risking their lives to come here? If it was such
yeah, they're not like, woo, I'm in Nigeria right now, but I want some of that American racism.
And give me some of that good old cool racism water.
All right, here we go.
Incurably evil place. Why, in the history of this country, Black Americans sacrificed their lives fighting for this nation? And I don't believe one was ever convicted of treason. Now, the 1619 saying that all of the sacrifices that Blacks who came before them made, they were naive, they were misguided. And that's what we're trying to do in 1776, is to find out what have been the strategies of Black survival in the presence of the jury segregation and slavery. How can we learn from those experiences? And then how can we find people today who are employing those same strategies of resilience? So it's very uplifting, it's aspirational, it's inspirational, and that's what the American public is looking for. We want answers.
Here's a test. You know how you know if you're a white person? Here's a test if you want to know if you're a racist. If you listen to this guy, look at this guy, listen to this guy and say, you know, I would not want to live next door to him.
You might be a racist. Yeah, the dude is awesome, man. I'm like, where? He needs some marketers on that team, because he's straight uplift, man. Like he said, we're not trying to be confrontational. We're just trying to research how it was done before, when the Black literacy rate was high and Black marriage rate was high and the family stability was high. You know,
birth participation rate was high.
And we just trying to bring that forward. I'm like, man, proving that I don't know everything.
Nobody knows everything.
Yeah, right. Because this guy, he know, man, he got to know at least half of what Jesus know. Because I'm like, wow. he hoped to be an Air Force veteran, and that's some inner service rivalry stuff right there. Because we always, you know, the services always talk crap about each other.
Right.
And I'm like,
right.
yeah, Air Force weenie, as the pilots used to call them.
All right, man.
You know, Bob, this is just actually making me think of your, you know, a bit of your history, actually, which I only know a little bit of. But, you know, you were actually, you know, in the civil rights movement back in the day. And maybe you could tell me a little bit about that, but then you actually chose to leave. And I think this speaks a bit to your, I guess, your philosophy and so forth. Maybe you could kind of expand on this. We talked a bit offline. Yeah.
As Apostle Paul says, who were you before you were baptized? And I was born in Philadelphia, a low-income Black neighborhood, but it was very cohesive. My dad died when I was 9, leaving my mother with a 5th grade education and 5 children to raise from ages 9 to 18. And so therefore, I found refuge in my peer group. I have 6 fellows who we were close friends back then, and we remained close. And so, and they were a year older than me. And so when they graduated from school, I dropped out of high school and went into the military, because you don't grow up in these neighborhoods unaffiliated. So I went in the military, very short, found myself, was in the space program. They saw talents in me. And so I was flying on a ship, on an airplane, tracking missiles, and involved in the expansion of the space program. But I took courses on campus. After I got my GED, I took courses from the University of Miami when it was segregated. So I have 9 credits from the University of Miami in math at a time when I couldn't take those courses on campus. And so then I got out and went to a small Black college, Cheney. I was on a year's probation because my SAT scores were so poor. But half of us made the dean's list in 6 months. And then I earned a full scholarship to University of Pennsylvania and got involved in the civil rights movement from there. And
how did he do that, man? There was no affirmative action.
What'd you say again, brother man?
But again, took that experience with me of understanding that your destiny is determined by what you do, not what anyone else does. And nothing is more lethal than a good excuse for failure. And so failure was not an option for me. So I took that energy into the civil rights movement. But the movement, again, I had this big debate before the New York Bar Association with Julius Chambers, who was a Black Harvard lawyer. And I was debating him at the New York Bar Association on the whole issue of whether we ought to embrace school integration. And so I guess about 80% through the debate, I posed this question to Julius. I said, Julius, if we have 2 circumstances, situation A, where there's all Black school, but there's a presence of excellence. School B is integrated, where excellence is diminished excellence. Where should we send our children? He said to school B. I said, then this debate is over.
My man.
We having a conversation about nothing then, bruh. Wow. Wow. Did he actually say that? I wish it was on film. He said, send them to school B because it's integrated, but it's just going to be piss poor. Instead of send them to a all Black school, and it's just going to be you can and will learn.
Yep.
Square equals C square. You going to learn algebra. Calculus never going to call you a nigga, and if it did, nigga, you need to study harder. Hey, did I just say it? I ended that, right? Yeah. They call you a nigga. That just means you need to study harder, nigga.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, I mean, that perspective on it is amazing.
wow.
I share that perspective, and he's not coming from like a black separatist point of view.
No, not at all. Not at all.
He's saying what Booker T. Washington said, and what I brought up, not to pat myself on the back, but I brought this up in the very first part of my book when I was talking to my professor in my jurisprudence class in law school, when he was talking about affirmative action. And he was like, well, I believe in affirmative action. White guy, great guy, love the guy. But he is like, I believe in affirmative action because it gives Black people the opportunity to get out of the ghetto, do better for themselves, and move into a neighborhood like mine. And I was like, well, why do I have to strive and bust my ass to live in your neighborhood? Like, to me, I mean, I wouldn't even.
But no, you still with that. It's strong and unbeatable. Like, why I got to be the only one in the neighborhood, man?
Yeah, I mean, nothing against him, but like, I'm striving to get away from Black people. I just something that just didn't sit right with me. And then
you got to listen to you, Dre. It still don't sit right with you.
Yeah,
It was like Master P. He was walking past his house. We didn't even know it. It's got to be on YouTube somewhere because I saw it. It was so tripped out. He was carrying his sneakers that he making in Korea. Selling Master P Yeezys. But he walking past, and the camera following him, and then he backs up. He starts walking backwards and said, "Oh, this is my house. Why I gotta stay in the hood? Why don't y'all come out here and join me? Come on in, the water's fine." He said, I'm like, Master P is saying this shit. I'm like looking at this nice mansion he's standing in front of, but he's saying the same thing you kind of saying. It's like, why I gotta be the only one? Why don't you come on out here? You don't have to set a standard that's based upon someone else. Just be excellent, because excellent across the board gonna be excellent, period.
yeah.
Right?
Excellence have no color. I mean, you got Japanese excellence, African excellence, Chinese excellence, Caucasian. Well, let's not say Caucasian. You got English excellence, German excellence, Finnish excellence, right? So my thing was, in that statement, it came off sounding like, here come the angry Black man. But that I didn't have that reputation, never have. But
right.
It wasn't aimed at him in white America. It was more so aimed at myself in Black America. Like, why do I have to get away from Black America to be deemed successful? How come Black America can't draw people to it? And I believe he's about to say this. Like, it's not about being a separatist or anything like that. But like Booker T. Washington was saying, get the skills, people will come to you. Like, if we're a community of people who have skills other people are willing to pay for, we live in safe neighborhoods, we value education, man, people will be beating down the doors to live next door to us. But if we got values, socialist, communist, Marxist values that depend on the government or feel you're entitled to everything from the government, no capitalist wants to live next door to that.
Heck
right?
no. It ain't gonna last.
Yeah. All right, so here we go.
Because I believe what we ought to do is pursue excellence. And then if you pursue excellence, let that attract people of different races, as opposed to believing that somehow sitting next to a white child imparts knowledge and wisdom. And so there's been a divide that I've had with the civil rights movement for over 50 years. I believe the opposite of segregation is desegregation. It is not integration.
Interesting.
If I choose to go to a Black church, that's a choice that I make. I don't want anybody telling me that I can't do that because I'm practicing segregation. We use this term segregation too loosely. I don't think that the Supreme Court decision should have been argued that separate is inherently unequal. I think we should have argued that separation is strategically unequal. Because if you say something is inherently unequal, it means anything is all Black is all bad. And that's what we're struggling with. A woman named Marva Collins in the East Side Academy in Chicago, public school teacher, got tired of seeing kids fail, started what she called the East Side Academy in this low-income neighborhood.
Did you say you know her?
Man, I know of her as a kid, like not her personally, but my mom, man, in college was talking about her. We knew about Marva Collins.
Wow.
Man.
Where she preached and insisted upon excellence. And kids who were dropping out of the public school were coming to her and they were learning and they were achieving. And when her reputation grew, whites were bringing their children in from the suburbs to attend her academy.
Right?
Because
And I'm going to name my unborn child Bob Woodson.
Bob Macalicious, Andre Davis Woodson.
Man, come on, where this guy been? Like, is he?
Dre, it's the business side of having an opinion. It's called marketing. Like you got Tucker Carlson talking all that craziness, but you know the marketers dropped off. He dropped some big marketers. He ain't losing no sleep though, because he got other marketers that are willing to. You know, he has other advertisers rather that his marketers are gonna bring to him. And it's like this guy is. He's not tap dancing. He's not doing no show. Even though, like we already talked about, black people even get Uncle Tom right. It was like wrong, rather, because Uncle Tom was the hero in Uncle Tom's Cabin, but black people done turned that into a negative. So it's like this guy, like marketing, bruh, is that man. This refreshing perspective hasn't been pushed. I put him almost like, you know, Thomas Sowell. I think is great because I think he jumps into a lot of the history and the numbers, but you know it doesn't mean that he can translate it as easily. You know what I'm saying? Mr. Woodson, he is translating it easily. It's teach it. It's like, wow, man, just listening to this guy is like you can get it.
Yeah, like Thomas Sowell, man, you got to pack a lunch
to go with him. Yeah, right. You got
he's not for the masses. And we're gonna do a video where we watching Thomas Sowell just take this lady apart. I did a video solo.
70s.
Yeah, but I want to do that video where he's like, "Ain't nobody asking for your help."
I didn't see him riff, but he had the, as my cousin said to me, man, you getting that Frederick Douglass, huh? I'm like, so he had that big fro and he had the fat. He was tearing into a lady. He was like, yeah, okay. But Woodson is teachable with him, I think. You know, that's
I mean, because they're about the same age. I think Sowell just turned 90, so he's probably got him by a decade maybe. But
he stopped teaching though, right? He's not teaching.
Yeah, he retired a little while ago. Thomas Sowell retired like 5 years ago, I think, or three or 4 years ago. But okay. I mean, you know, Bob Wilson is since the 60s. He's been preaching the same stuff or saying the same stuff. And you were right. He needs a better marketing campaign. But I'm gonna go out, and I think he's gonna bring this up. That he said it, David and Goliath. Like he's out there with a little megaphone, you know, a little Fisher Price, you know, megaphone, microphone, and he up against like the Super Bowl's PA system.
Yeah, right, right.
Can't nobody hear him, and I'm just glad that I was able to stumble across him, and hopefully people will share this. I'll put the video in its entirety in the description, but
what the link to the video you gonna post it?
I'll put that in the description. But yeah, let's keep going.
Their children were struggling, but they knew that Marva Collins had a special way of teaching children with challenges. And so that's how integration should be a response to excellence. Because if you create a center of excellence, people will seek you out. That's what should attract people, is the presence of excellence. And that's why I'm saying in the Black community, we used to understand that we must pursue excellence. And once we do, people will seek us out. As opposed.
And I'll just real brief. He's saying pursue, not be, right? So because I think a lot of people, our community is always comparing our community to the broader white community, right? And they got more money or they got more education or whatever. And it's like, and they take it like it's a photo and that's it, right? But he's saying pursue excellence. That's different from being excellent. So you got to first pursue excellence, and it's a constant pursuit. So if you're a mediocre student today, that don't mean you have to die as a mediocre student.
Amen, man. Amen. You just said it right there. But then again, like we looking at all this Black Lives Matter stuff, and I was immediately shaking my head. I'm like, that's why the diet industry is like Ike Turner and some pimps, because people don't have consistency, and you can't stay on a diet because that's an internal, not an external. And if you out there wandering the street looking for a hug, Black folks, stop doing it. Improve yourself personally, because these mugs ain't gonna remember you in July of next year.
Right.
It was a flash mob moment, and people just don't have the discipline to change internally, and that's part of the problem. You got to pursue excellence, just like he's saying, and just like you were saying, because it's not going to be something that you can just constantly like have as a condition. It's kind of like what The Rock even was talking about. He get up at 4 a.m. lifting weights, man. That's why he got 36-inch arms. He don't take a day off, man. He constantly get up. And it's a pursuit of that.
The pursuit. All right, here we go.
To special treatment as if we are perpetual victims, that our destiny is determined. Can you imagine if you are a 10-year-old child being raised in an inner city school that now has the 1619 curriculum that said America is irretrievably racist, and therefore, unless white people give you something, you can't possibly help yourself. And also, they're vilifying the police department as saying, well, the police are agents of white suppression. Why then would, if that child now who's 18 is going to be called upon to defend the nation in the military, why would they want to join the military? Why would they want to become police officers to protect their community? So I think what is happening today is more dangerous than people realize. It has national security implications. Police forces are under physical attack, and they're being encouraged by liberal left-wing politicians. Police officers, people are throwing water on them, and they're not being charged with assault. But the result of this is that recruitment for police officers throughout the country, in some cases, are down 62%, which means in Minnesota, the police department reports they cannot even respond readily to all of the 911 calls. Well, if this is allowed to spread, what is our country going to be like? And so this 1619 isn't some abstract debate. It has real world consequences, dire consequences for our future if it's not stopped. And 1776 is determined to stop the bleeding.
You know, you just reminding me, there's this op-ed that you wrote, again, some days ago about 1776, where you mentioned that, you know, I think you said that 1619 is kind of a grand weapon for identity politics.
Oh yeah, it's being weaponized. That race is being weaponized and used as a political tool to really and they're using low-income Blacks as a battering ram to really attack the fundamentals of this nation.
I say it all the time.
I really think that there are many on the left, and I don't say liberals, I say left-wing people are doing everything they can to denigrate this country because they despise it. And I think freedom-loving people need to stand together and push back against us. And they're using the Black community in the most exploitative way. That's what really angers me, that it's being the Black community and the real conditions of slavery and discrimination are being used as a tool to really to injure this nation.
Now, either
Wow.
I've been eavesdropping on him or he been eavesdropping on me. And he's older, so I would give him all the credit. But yeah, he said battering ram, I said Trojan horse, but the effect is the same. And I think maybe because of his age, we get this notion that if you're, oh, they're attacking freedom-loving America, right? And you just sound like, to me, that kind of sounds like old school, like Ronald Reagan.
Sound right when you say that kind of stuff, but that's not necessarily the case. But you just sound like that.
Yeah, and it's kind
a
of
perception.
I can understand it because, like, when Ronald Reagan was president, I was like, what, in my teens or whatnot, and it was kind of off-putting because I didn't feel a connection to America. Right? America was this like bad actor in my life. But as I got older and I was able to see the good and bad of America and how people who look like me and you benefited from the values that the forefathers brought to the world. Then I was able to see, okay, like he said, you don't want to look at America, like what he said about Hank Aaron. He could be either the strikeout king or the home run king,
Right.
So choose to look at it through the eyes of positivity. And yes, 90% of Blacks in America were enslaved, but 10% weren't. And in that 90%, 100% of them didn't get their foot cut off. So you gotta,
right.
tell the truth, the whole truth, right? Because it's important. And this systematic disinformation has really just crippled the Black community and is crippling the American community. Because like you said, nobody's gonna care about the Black Lives Matter movement or George Floyd next year. The people out there protesting are being used by these anti-capitalists that he's talking about. The people who really hate America, they want to usher in socialism and communism.
That ain't gonna happen. I've been saying that. I've been walking around the crib saying that is not gonna happen. Them AR-15 toting, put Marxism. No way, it's not happening. So stop dreaming about it. You just not going.
You ain't gonna. They not coming out and saying, well, shit, man. BLT, Black Lives Matter. They're just saying, like, we're trained Marxists, and they got everybody in America donating to them.
She's one of the three women that started that whole thing, and I'm like, she a Marxist. I'm like, you know how much blood is on Marxism's hands? You crazy.
And think about it, man. They done tore down all these statues up in Seattle, and they done left Lenin standing.
Right? The irony of that shit, right? It's like how a statue of Lenin. That one was gangster. Hey, Papa Joe was terrible, though. You know what I'm saying? He was worse than Joe Jackson.
Yeah.
His body count.
Right? And you're right. They're not going to, you're not going to get a politician to get up there and say, well, Bernie Sanders said he was a democratic socialist. But people don't wait.
They don't know what it means. Like you was probably, they don't even know what that means.
They don't even know what it means. So the fact that, in 10, 15 years from now, if we still going down this road, you could get the United Socialist States of America without us even knowing what happened. We wake up one day and we're the only capitalists in the country of Marxists, which means we're on our way to a bullet.
The gulag about to get taken out back as what happens in so many revolutions. They get the lawyers, the professors, and they take them out back, blast them. You know, you can't really say nothing against the party all of a sudden. So.
Right. All right, let's let them go. We're only halfway through this thing.
Wow.
So tell me more about this. How is that actually happening practically?
Well, you know, back in the, I write about the fact that the person who wrote about this is Fred Siegel at the Manhattan Institute. He has a book, The Future Once Happened Here.
Okay.
And in it, he documents the fact that the Black community is the moral barometer of the moral health of the country. That's the way I look at it, and he does too. And the very fact that central to the cohesiveness of a person's life is your family, having a two-parent family. Well, up until 1962, 85% of all Black households had a man and a woman raising children. And so there were people on, and then we had the poverty program came along. There were two social scientists, Clowen and Piven, at the University of Columbia University School of Social Work. They said, and they were leftists, and they said, one of the ways that we can emphasize the contradictions of capitalism is to just flood the system with welfare recipients. But they couldn't just do this because of their political philosophy. But then you had Mayor Lindsay, who was a liberal mayor. Then the federal government had its poverty program. So they began to open up poverty offices throughout New York and the major cities to actively recruit Blacks onto the welfare system. Following the riots, they said, we must recruit. One of the ways of doing, but welfare in the Black community up until that time was stigmatized. Oh, welfare was, it said, no one wants to go on relief, they called it. And so what the left had to do is to challenge that stigmatization. And the way you do it is to say, well, welfare is really social insurance. Well, welfare is really reparations for the evils of slavery and discrimination. So you have a right to it. And also they had to therefore, and this is what they actually wrote, that if somehow we can separate work from income, it will make the father redundant. And then it will transfer the authority to the state. And then you will see an increase in school dropout rates, drug addiction, crime. All of these social dysfunctions will begin to occur, and they were correct. And he points out in his book that in just a 3 to 4 year period in the early 70s, when the rules changed, it was aided by the women's movement because they felt that the father was redundant. The Black Power movement said that the nuclear family was Ozzie and Harriet, Eurocentric, and therefore racist. And so we should not be holding Blacks to the standard of a nuclear family. And welfare was a right. And so suddenly that stigma was removed. And Blacks were recruited into the welfare system. And they made welfare more generous than work. And as a consequence, thousands flood.
What's up? Can't hear you.
Bruh, he killing it. Like, it's like, I'm speechless because he just riffing it, man. He's saying he done took down the Black Panther movement. He done took feminism out, all in like 3 sentences. He done taken all this stuff out in 3 sentences. I'm like, if I could disagree with him, I'd have to read for about 50 more years, and I ain't living 50 more years. Do it. It's like he makes a lot of sense about these social movements that started happening, and I started thinking in terms of union. So they went and they had a reverse union workaround, meaning they unionized poor Black folk to believe in a bunch of bullshit that don't benefit them, and they de facto unionized them, right? I mean, is that like a synopsis of what he's saying to an extent?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and I don't want to come across, and you, I'm pretty sure you don't. Like, I'm not anti-feminist, not anti
Either of us.
Black Panther in what they, when that Black Panthers were anti-racial discrimination, I'm lockstep with them. But their political policies were socialist/communist. And that's where, as a capitalist, I have to disagree.
Oh, and I disagree with that.
Disagree. Like, yeah, and I believe, like, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Black Panther movement was corrupted by communist Marxists, right? They got into that movement and made it more, and that's documented. That's documented. I mean, even that show, The Americans, if you just want to be on the contemporary level and not books, they show how Russia was trying to infiltrate the Black community to usher in communist type policy. So that's nothing.
Wow, because I've seen ads for it, and I was like, it looks kind of.
Yeah, and they used that racial tension, racial division, the prejudice in America to, you know, they water that seed and try and grow communists, and I believe they succeeded more than people realize. You know, because anytime you get a Black Lives Matter organization to two founders up there saying, yeah, we're Marxists, and the next thing I see is, you know, Apple supports Black Lives Matter. I'm like,
they're trying to hold Facebook hostage and all this stuff.
Like, I mean, that's the Jesse Jackson shakedown move, and that's great.
Yep, I said that, right? I was like,
go read the book.
When I see.
All right, let's keep it going with this.
Put it into the system at a time when the unemployment rate for Black men in New York was 4%. And sure enough, what they predicted came true. The New York City, they went bankrupt, as they predicted. Also, you saw all of the pathologies began to express itself as the family disintegrated. And so what we went from a 85% family with only 30% now being raised. So this decline occurred not as a result of slavery and discrimination, because as I pointed out, because the Black family rate was constant up until that time. And so this is why we have the conditions today. So when a Black woman in New Jersey got up at the school board meeting in response, supporting 1619, said, the reason that Black men are not in homes is because of slavery. And so it is important for us in 1776 to really fill this education void of information. But it's not going to be done by publishing white papers and having this discussed on talk radio. We have got to develop a retail strategy, as the left has done, to develop curriculum, to develop videotapes, social media. Let's go back and talk about the Blacks who were born slaves who died millionaires.
Hey, y'all, coming up, it's called Things I Also Wish I Learned in February. By yours truly. Little pamphlets.
They taught it on February 32nd.
Yeah, I agree 1,000% with him. There's so much, you know, negativity concerned with Black identity. And I'm not going to say, wow, found an equal amount of positivity, but I mean, there's a lot of positivity that goes with Black America that has nothing to do with racism or white people or whatever. It's just or slavery. And I think it's an American story. I think anybody who first, we got to figure out what I truly believe we need. Education is the key, but you got to start with what made America unique and this misconception that slavery made America unique needs to be thrown out the window. So once you, from that platform, what made America unique, you can, blacks can be included in that story. Like, you know, if you read, and I'll let them finish here, if you don't have nothing to do with America and you want to read something, read the Dred Scott case and make sure you read all of it, including the dissent, because that is where you will find that during, you know, blacks who could vote, meaning they weren't slaves, they owned property, and well, they were males, right? If you could vote back then, you voted to ratify the Constitution. And in 5 states, black folks qualified, black men who own property, like white men who own property, voted to ratify the Constitution. So we've been involved in this country from the giddy up, as they say. And unfortunately, 90% of us were stuck in an institution as old as man, right? And what's unique about America is this thought that slavery is evil, that individual liberty and individual self-responsibility is something that is close to godliness, basically. And our rights don't come from a king or a government. We are born with these rights. So that's what made America unique. And this movement towards socialism, Marxism, and all that, they don't want none of that, because the people who lead that movement, they just want to rule. They just want to rule you. So if you want America to become one big plantation, just have it keep going down that road.
Mm.
You know, Bob, you know, I've read about the Cloward-Piven strategy, so to speak, before. That's, I think you can look it up for our viewers, Cloward-Piven strategy online. It's astounding to me that people, when I read about this, that people could come up with this idea that would effectively, you know, function to destroy society as it exists, not considering, you know, that these are people, I guess. I mean, that's when I read this, it was like reading a horror story. I mean, the strategy, so to speak, and then the effects. Is it, you know, how do you explain that? You have any thoughts on this?
Well, how to explain to people that this didn't happen, you know? Well, and again, the left is good at marketing. And those of us who believe in the founders, we're not very good at a retail strategy. And that's what we're trying to present. The left pours millions of dollars. I mean, 1619, they had a commercial at the Oscars. They had that same commercial supporting 1619 was at the NBA All-Star game. That commercial cost $2.3 million. Those of us who believe in liberty, who believe in this nation, we got to be willing to invest the way the other side has invested. And that's what 1776 is trying to do, persuade Americans. If you believe in freedom, if you believe in it, you can't just be content with fun.
But most of us don't even know nothing about this freedom, as Mammy from Gone with the Wind would say.
I don't know nothing about it.
I don't know nothing about this freedom. So, and this is literally true. Like, and I'll be the first to say, man, I go from elementary school, high school, college, law school, you know, and didn't really understand what made America unique until recently. I mean, just within the past couple of years. I mean, I wrote the book, Our Two Societies, and I had a kind of a glimpse of what freedom was, but that book wasn't about that. It kind of alluded to the necessity of being responsible for yourself in this type of society. But a deep understanding of it, or even I don't think that's necessary. just an understanding of it. Like what it means, what makes America, America, you know, and not England or not Canada or not France or not Spain. And I think we're brought up in urban America, Black America. All those countries are the same because they're all Caucasian.
I think you summed it up right there.
All right, I'm gonna end this one here because I think I'm gonna rush through the rest of it. We up on 45 minutes, and we're gonna come back with part 3. So if you're still with us, definitely like, share, subscribe, and we'll be back soon with part 3. And so I'm gonna end it here.